Greetings, team! Today I am going to go through all the steps to completely recreate a Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. From backing up the ROM and save file, if it still exists, to essentially manufacturing a reprint of your game. There are a few pitfalls to this process that I bumped into, so be sure to watch till the end so you can avoid them. First step is to grab your cartridge, along with a laptop and a GBX Cart RW from Insider Gadget. You will notice here that I have a 3D printed shell that just snaps right over the hardware. I'll drop a link to the files that I printed. You can also just use a Game Boy Advance shell. The software for Insider Gadget is fairly intuitive. My Windows machine did flag the installer as being malicious, but since this laptop has never and will never connect to any of my personal accounts, I did not care that much and allowed the install. The installer does prompt for the installation of a serial driver as well. Once all that is set up, getting a game off a cart is as easy as pressing a few buttons after you insert it, of course. Be sure to save the files somewhere safe and make backups. Getting the ROM and save data off the cart is the same process. You just click a few different buttons. The Insider Gadget website has a few video tutorials, but you will not need to reference any of them as this process is pretty simple. Once you have your ROM and saves files, pull the old cart out and insert a new one. The ones you see here are from AliExpress. The Perfect Dark cart was about $6, while the other two were around $4 a piece. The reason for the price difference is that the Perfect Dark cart has a battery installed, so the SRAM will actually hold the save data, and the other one doesn't. I've bought a few handful of cartridges from AliExpress, and the best bet is to stick with the Perfect Dark cart from the seller that goes by Songfin. Other sellers will say their cartridge will hold a save file, but what they really did was put in a capacitor under an epoxy blob so that their cart would hold a save file for an hour or so. This is why you will see some reviews saying that it does hold a save. I'll link Songfin and their AliExpress shop below. Now, even though these carts do not hold a save, they might still be worth buying. One of the reasons is that they are often the cheapest way to get your hands on cartridge stickers of the game you're trying to preserve. That is certainly the case for my yellow version here. Another reason is that some games don't have save files. For example, this Rocket Power game uses codes that you would enter while in game to move to a different phase of the game. This ROM would be perfect for these cheaper AliExpress carts. For the cheaper carts, I found that all of them use a similar Mechatronics NOR flash memory chip. You can't go wrong with any of them since they will likely last you 20 plus years, even if you powered up the cart multiple times a day. If you were to ever open up one of the AliExpress carts, you would find that their electronics are a little lacking. They're hiding a few components under a blob here. The reason for this is because they likely are just using a tiny wafer that handles the reading and writing of the ROM. If something were to fail on these, it would be under here for sure. And just to show you, here is the Perfect Darks PCB. There's the battery, and it is swappable. So again, that is why I recommend this guy. If you were to compare that to a regular Game Boy game that required the ability to save, you're gonna see that there's a big difference in the size of the board, first of all. And number two, there's actually a little battery on there and a couple more electronics. So if you'll notice, these use the same form factor as the Game Boy Advance, the ones from AliExpress here, whereas the original Game Boy does not. And if you look on the backs of a lot of the carts, the ones you get from AliExpress have the screw a little higher than the official Game Boy ones. And you'll notice the Game Boy ones line the hole up right there, where these don't have a hole on them, and they just put it somewhere in the top so they don't interfere when you screw it together. Because of that, you can't always use just any old cart. You got to be careful there. You got to look to make sure that what you're using will actually work and fit. For example, here is the original Nintendo, and here's the AliExpress for the yellow version. There's a stud in here that holds it into place, where the yellow version cart would not do a very good job holding it. There's no screw positioning, and the spot where the screw lines up doesn't even line up with the hole. If you are going to reshell an old game into a new piece of plastic, you need to pay attention to that placement when you get the AliExpress order. You might be wondering why you would put a game on a lesser quality PCB from China when the original is perfectly clean and in near fine condition. The answer to that would be not to bother and to keep playing on the original cartridge, provided you replaced that battery if it's been older than 20 years like this one has been. If your shell is damaged, you could rehouse it. And if the label is falling apart, either get a reprint or do it yourself. I'll show you how to do it yourself in a minute here. The reason you would move a ROM over to this cheaper Chinese hardware would be if you had a few games that were stored in a less than desirable climate and you are not sure if this cart will hold on. The other reason would be so that the original cart can be put on a shelf and admired while you play with the copy. Just be sure not to sell the copy, as that would be against the law. What if you need to use the real-time clock, say for your backup of silver or gold? Well, then you will want to get the Game Boy blanks from Funny Playing, being sure to get the ones that have the extra circuitry that keeps the time while the game is powered off. Speaking of Funny Playing, I love their $80 little Game Boy clones. This has really been a fun item that pairs well with my brand new carts. The Funny Playing carts will require you to buy the shell with the hole in the proper placement, and unfortunately you will not have much luck getting good quality labels on those type of shells. So for instances like that, your best bet is to print it yourself. All you need is an inkjet printer, a straight cutter, a corner rounder, and some photo paper. That's vinyl and adhesive back. To generate the art that you can see here, you could ask ChatGPT to make it, or you could design it yourself in GIMP. There are a few templates floating around, but all you need to do is fit your art in a 37 by 42 millimeter footprint and round off the corners to 1.5 to 3 millimeters. The one I have here rounds off to 3 millimeters, and I found, though it's a little more extreme than the actual art, it's not noticeable if you're not comparing the two. All the items you will need will be linked below. Now, don't be tempted to use scissors. Spring for that straight cutter and corner rounder. It'll make the quality look that much better. There you have it. Doing all of that will get you up and running and feeling like you just took your Game Boy cartridges right out of the box. And if you have a Funny Playing Game Boy, you'd just be playing with all brand new tech at this point. Hopefully you are now encouraged to start your own reprints of your favorite Game Boy games. And until next time, I'm the Ill-Informed Human. Goodbye!